Dr. Somin Park pressed her bloodied hands against the cold metal wall of the prison ship. Her white medical coat was torn and dirty from the battle 3 days ago. The Vortex soldiers had dragged her from the field hospital on Kepler 442b after their surprise attack on the human colony. Now she stood in a massive holding bay that looked like the inside of a giant metal cave. Deep scratch marks covered the walls, each one as wide as her hand. Some scratches went so deep they reached the ship's inner hull. The air smelled of burnt metal and something else she could not identify. The energy barrier behind her hummed with deadly power. Commander Tekvol had thrown her in here with a cruel smile on his gray face. His yellow eyes had glowed with satisfaction as he spoke in broken human language. "You heal human soldiers to fight us again," he had said. "Now you heal our weapon or die with it." Somin walked forward on shaking legs. The holding bay was huge, bigger than a football field. In the center, she saw chains. Not normal chains, but glowing plasma restraints that could hold a starship. And wrapped in those chains was the largest living thing she had ever seen. The creature raised its massive head. 6 eyes, each one the size of a dinner plate, opened and fixed on her. They glowed with blue-green light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The thing's body was covered in scales that shifted color from deep purple to bright red as it watched her. Somin knew what it was. Every human in the galaxy knew about the Kethmori dragons. The Vorthak Empire used them as weapons to destroy entire cities. They breathed fire hot enough to melt steel and were strong enough to tear apart spaceships with their claws. But as she got closer, something seemed wrong. The creature's breathing was labored. Dark fluid leaked from wounds between its scales. Its great wings hung at odd angles, clearly broken in several places. Somin reached for her medical scanner. The small device had survived the battle and her capture. Its screen lit up with readings that made her gasp. The creature was dying. Internal bleeding, infected wounds, broken bones that had never healed properly. Someone had been torturing this magnificent being for a very long time. "You're in pain," she whispered without thinking. The dragon's 6 eyes focused on her with sudden intensity. The red glow faded to curious blue. Somin had always been good with animals back on Earth. Stray dogs and injured birds seemed to trust her naturally. But this was different. Something deep in her mind tingled like a phone ringing in another room. She took another step forward. The creature could kill her in seconds, but it just watched. Up close, she could see intelligence in those alien eyes. Not the mindless hunger of a beast, but the awareness of a thinking being. "I'm a doctor," she said softly. "I help people who are hurt." The dragon tilted its enormous head. Then something impossible happened. A voice spoke inside her mind, not with words, but with meaning she somehow understood. "Human, you hear me?" Somin stumbled backward. The voice was deep and old, filled with pain that went beyond physical wounds. It was the voice of someone who had suffered for longer than she could imagine. "I can hear you," she whispered. "How is this possible?" The dragon's mental voice came again, stronger this time. "Long time, since anyone heard. Vorthak make me forget, make me only weapon." Somin's medical training took over. She approached slowly, hands visible and empty. The creature watched but did not move to attack. When she reached the plasma restraints, she could feel the heat they gave off. "They were designed to cause constant pain. What's your name?" she asked. The dragon was quiet for a long moment. When it answered, the mental voice was barely a whisper. "Forgot. They made me forget my name. Made me forget everything but anger and pain." Somin pulled out her scanner and began taking readings. The creature's body was a map of old injuries and fresh wounds. Burns from energy weapons, cuts from blades, and worse things she could not identify. But beneath all that damage, the readings showed something else. Power. Vast, controlled power that was somehow being suppressed. "I'm going to help you," she said, "but I need to touch you to treat your wounds." "Will you let me?" The dragon's eyes studied her for a long time. "Why humans fear me? I destroy human worlds for Vorthak masters." "Because you're hurt," Somin said simply. "And because I think you didn't choose to do those things." She placed her hands on the creature's massive snout. The scales were warm and surprisingly smooth. The moment they touched, the connection between their minds grew stronger. She could feel the dragon's emotions now. Centuries of loneliness, forced violence, and a deep sadness that threatened to drown her. But she also felt something else. Hope. Tiny and fragile, but growing stronger. "Tell me your real name," she said. "The one they made you forget." The dragon's mental voice was stronger now, more confident. "Heijin. My name is Heijin. It means ocean treasure in the old language of my people. Heijin, So-min repeated aloud. That's a beautiful name. For the first time in decades, Heijin's scales shifted to a warm golden color. Not the angry red of warning or the cold purple of despair, but something new. Something like happiness. You speak it with kindness, he said. The Vorthak only use numbers. Subject 47, they call me. So-min began working on his wounds with her limited medical supplies. As she cleaned and bandaged, Heijin shared fragments of memory. A world of crystal cities that sang in the wind, great libraries built from living coral, a people who could fly between the stars without ships, riding currents of space and time itself. They bombed my world to steal our eggs, Heijin told her. Took the children and broke their minds early. Made us into weapons before we could remember what we truly are. What are you truly? So-min asked. Guardians, Heijin said with quiet pride. We kept balance in the galaxy, healed sick worlds, guided lost travelers, protected the innocent, until the Vorthak came. As night fell on the ship, So-min curled up against Heijin's warm side. The dragon's breathing was easier now, and some of his smaller wounds had already begun to heal. But more importantly, the terrible sadness in his mind had lifted slightly. Thank you, he whispered as she fell asleep, for remembering my name. Outside their cage, Vorthak guards watched in confusion. Their ultimate weapon lay peacefully beside the human prisoner, both sleeping soundly. None of them noticed the strange energy readings beginning to spike on their instruments, or the way the ship's lights flickered in rhythm with the dragon's heartbeat. The Vorthak science officer Mordesh stood before the massive viewing screen in the ship's control room. His forearms moved quickly over the control panels as he studied the readings from the holding bay. What he saw made no sense. Impossible, he hissed through his breathing mask. The translator device on his chest turned his words into standard galactic language. No alien species has ever formed a neural link with a Kethmori. They bond only to us through pain conditioning. Captain Velkorn joined him at the screen. Her gray skin had turned darker with worry. Through the cameras, they watched the human medic sitting beside the dragon's great head. The woman's hands glowed with soft white light as she worked on the creature's wounds. Look at these readings, Mordesh said, pointing to his screen. The Kethmori's aggression levels have dropped to 0. In 20 years of captivity, Subject 47 has never shown readings this low. Captain Velkorn studied the data with growing alarm. What about the human? What do her brain scans show? That is the strangest part, Mordesh replied. Her neural activity is completely unknown. I have never seen patterns like these in any species we have studied. On the screen, they watched So-min place her hands on different parts of Heijin's body. Wherever she touched, the dragon's wounds seemed to heal faster, but more disturbing was the way both of them moved together, as if they were sharing thoughts. Run a deep scan on both subjects, Captain Velkorn ordered. I want to know exactly what is happening down there. In the holding bay, So-min felt the scanner beams washing over them. She looked up at the cameras and saw the red lights that meant the Vorthak were watching closely. They're afraid, Heijin said in her mind. They feel their control slipping away. So-min continued working on a deep cut along his shoulder. Tell me more about your people. What were the Kethmori really like before the Vorthak came? Heijin's 6 eyes grew distant as he remembered. We were the children of space itself. Each of us could feel the currents of time and gravity. We moved between worlds not in ships, but by bending space around us. As he spoke, So-min felt images flow through their connection. She saw crystal cities floating in the clouds of gas giant planets. She watched Kethmori dragons dancing through asteroid fields, their scales glowing with starlight. Most amazing of all, she saw them healing damaged planets using their powers to restore dead worlds to life. You were gardeners, she said with wonder. Gardeners of the galaxy. Yes, Heijin replied sadly. We tended the cosmic garden for millions of years. When stars burned too hot, we cooled them. When worlds grew cold and dead, we brought them back to life. We kept the balance, and what happened to change all that? Heijin's scales darkened as painful memories surfaced. The Vorthak discovered our world during their first expansion wars. They saw our powers and decided we would make perfect weapons. They bombed our cities from orbit and stole our eggs before they could hatch. So-min felt tears on her cheeks as she experienced his memories. She saw young dragons, barely hatched, being tortured with pain devices. She watched as their natural abilities were twisted and corrupted, turned from healing to destruction. They broke our minds when we were children, Heijin continued, made us forget our true nature, taught us that we were nothing but tools of war. But you remember now? So-min said softly. Our connection is helping you remember who you really are. She was right. As their bond grew stronger, Heijin felt his original memories returning. The neural implants that had suppressed his true nature for decades were beginning to fail. Deep inside his mind, powers that had been locked away were starting to wake up. I can feel it, he said with growing excitement. The old strength is coming back. The Vorthak technology cannot hold it much longer. So-min placed both hands on his forehead and concentrated. Through their link, she could sense the alien devices buried in his brain. They were like tiny machines designed to cause pain and block certain thoughts. But her strange healing power was different from anything the Vorthak had ever encountered. Slowly, carefully, she began to disrupt the neural implants. It was like performing surgery with her mind instead of her hands. Each device she disabled brought more of Heijin's memories flooding back. Up in the control room, alarms began to sound. Captain, Mordesh called out in panic. The neural suppressors are failing. All of them at once. How is that possible? Velkorn demanded. I don't know. The human seems to be disrupting them somehow. The Kethemori's power readings are climbing rapidly. On the screen, they watched as the air around So-min and Heijin began to shimmer. Strange lights danced across the holding bay walls. The very space around them seemed to bend and twist. Sound the alert, Captain Velkorn ordered. All sections prepare for emergency containment protocols. But it was already too late. As the last neural implant failed, Heijin's true abilities awakened fully for the first time in 20 years. The plasma restraints that had held him began to spark and weaken. The metal walls of the holding bay groaned under the pressure of warped spacetime. So-min, Heijin said urgently, you must prepare yourself. When I break free, the Vorthak will try to kill us both. She climbed onto his neck, her hands gripping his warm scales. I'm ready. We're in this together now. Around them, reality itself began to change. Heijin's power was not like the crude technology of the Vorthak. It was elegant and precise, working with the natural laws of physics instead of against them. The dragon's body began to glow with soft golden light as he remembered how to manipulate space and time. Hold tight, he warned. I am going to show these conquerors what a true Kethemori can do. The plasma restraints exploded in showers of sparks. For the first time in 20 years, Heijin was free. His massive wings spread wide as he rose to his full height. The holding bay suddenly seemed much too small to contain him. Thank you, little healer, he said to So-min. You have given me back my soul. Above them, emergency lights flashed as the ship's crew ran to battle stations. But Heijin was no longer the broken weapon they had created. He was something far more dangerous to their empire. He was a Kethemori who remembered his true purpose, and he was angry. Commander Tekful ran down the corridor toward the control room as red emergency lights flashed all around him. The ship's alarm system screamed warnings in the Vorthak language. Crew members rushed past him carrying weapons and emergency equipment. Report, he shouted as he burst into the control room. Captain Velkorn turned from her station with fear in her yellow eyes. Sir, the neural suppressors have completely failed. Subject 47 is showing power readings we have never seen before. Impossible, Tekful snarled. Those implants were designed by our best scientists. They cannot fail. Watch the screen, sir, Mordesh said quietly. On the main display, they could see the holding bay transforming before their eyes. The air itself seemed to glow with strange energy. Gravity was behaving oddly, making loose objects float in lazy circles. Most shocking of all, the massive blast doors that sealed the bay were beginning to bend outward like soft metal. In the center of it all, Heijin stood with his wings spread wide. The human medic sat on his neck, her hands glowing with the same soft light that surrounded them both. The dragon scales had changed from their usual dark purple to brilliant gold and silver. The human, Tekful said with growing rage. This is her doing somehow. She has corrupted our weapon. Sir, Lieutenant Baktul called from his station. We are receiving strange reports from all over the ship. Electronic systems are malfunctioning in random sections. The gravity generators are fluctuating. Several crew members report having vivid dreams even while awake. Tekful studied the readings with growing alarm. Whatever was happening in the holding bay was affecting the entire ship. The power that the dragon was releasing seemed to flow through the metal walls like water through a sponge. Increase the containment field strength, he ordered. Double the energy output to the barriers. Sir, we are already at maximum power, Mordesh replied. The containment system was not designed to hold this level of energy. On the screen, they watched as Hai-Jin placed one massive claw against the energy barrier. Where he touched it, the deadly field simply disappeared like smoke. The dragon's power was not breaking through the barrier. It was unmaking it at the most basic level. In the holding bay, So-Min felt the change in Hai-Jin's mind. The confused and broken creature she had first met was gone. In his place was something ancient and powerful beyond imagination. Through their link, she could sense abilities that human science could barely understand. "What are you doing to the ship?" she asked. "Remembering," Hai-Jin replied. His mental voice was stronger now, filled with confidence and purpose. The Vorthak built their technology by copying and corrupting the abilities of other species. But they never truly understood how those powers work. As he spoke, So-Min felt his consciousness expanding outward. It flowed through the ship like invisible fingers touching every system and every mind aboard. She realized that Hai-Jin was not just affecting machines. He was affecting reality itself in the space around them. "My people were connected to the fundamental forces of the universe," he explained. "Space, time, gravity, energy. We could feel them all and work with them as easily as you might use your hands." The blast doors that sealed the holding bay began to dissolve, not melting or breaking but simply ceasing to exist. Where solid metal had been, there was now empty space leading to the corridor beyond. Alarms shrieked even louder as the ship's sensors detected the breach. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the vessel. But Hai-Jin's influence was spreading faster than the Vorthak could respond to it. "The weapons storage bay," Captain Velkorn said suddenly. "If his power reaches the quantum torpedoes, evacuate that section immediately," Tekvol ordered. "Move all critical weapons to the far side of the ship." But it was already too late. Hai-Jin's awakening power was affecting everything within a growing radius. In the weapons storage bay, the quantum torpedoes began to resonate with strange energies. Their containment fields flickered as reality bent around them. More disturbing were the reports coming from other parts of the ship. Vorthak crew members were experiencing sudden flashes of memory that were not their own. They saw crystal cities and beings of light. They felt emotions they had never experienced before. Compassion and wonder and joy. "He is sharing his memories with them," So-Min realized. "Showing them what they destroyed?" "Yes," Hai-Jin confirmed. "Perhaps some will understand. Perhaps some will choose a different path." In the medical bay, Dr. Zekmar staggered as alien memories flooded his mind. He saw the Vorthak invasion of the Kethmori homeworld through the eyes of a young dragon. He felt the terror and pain of captured children being tortured into submission. For the first time in his life, he truly understood what his people had done. Similar scenes played out across the ship as Hai-Jin's influence spread. Some Vorthak crew members fought against the foreign memories, clinging to their beliefs about conquest and superiority, but others began to question everything they had been taught. "Sir," Baktul reported with a shaking voice, "we are receiving surrender requests from 3 different sections. The crew members are refusing to fight, cowards," Tekvol spat. "Send security teams to arrest them." "Sir, the security teams are requesting orders to stand down. They say they cannot fight against the memories they are seeing." On the screen, Hai-Jin and So-Min walked calmly through the dissolved doorway and into the ship's main corridor. The dragon had to fold his wings and lower his head to fit, but he moved with surprising grace for something so large. Wherever they went, the ship's systems responded to Hai-Jin's presence. Lights dimmed and brightened in rhythm with his heartbeat. The artificial gravity fluctuated, sometimes making them feel lighter than air. Reality itself seemed to bend around them. "Stop them," Tekvol screamed at his crew. "Use every weapon we have." But when the security teams arrived, they found they could not pull their triggers. The memories that Hai-Jin had shared showed them too clearly what their weapons had done to innocent beings. For the first time, many Vorthak understood the true cost of their empire. "This is impossible," Tekvol muttered. "They are just one human and one dragon. We have hundreds of crew members." "Commander," Captain Velkorn said quietly, "perhaps we should consider negotiation." Tekvol spun to face her with fury in his eyes. "Never. We do not negotiate with weapons or with aliens." But even as he spoke, more sections of the ship reported crew members laying down their arms. The awakening power of the Kethmori was changing more than just machines and energy fields. It was changing hearts and minds as well. And in the corridor, So-Min and Hai-Jin continued their slow, inevitable march toward the ship's bridge. The prison ship Devastation dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vorthak capital system. Its massive hull gleamed in the light of the system's twin suns as it approached the fleet staging area. Admiral Grekthor's flagship waited in the distance, surrounded by 200 warships of the Imperial Navy. All the ships had gathered for one purpose. Today they would watch the human resistance's last stronghold burn under dragonfire. Commander Tekful had promised a demonstration of the Kethmori's power that would end the rebellion forever. But inside the Devastation, nothing was going according to plan. So-Min held tight to Hai-Jin's neck scales as they moved through the ship's corridors. The dragon's massive form barely fit in the hallways designed for much smaller beings. His golden scales scraped against the metal walls, leaving bright scratches behind. "The bridge is just ahead," Hai-Jin said through their mental link. "I can sense many minds there. They are afraid but still defiant. Can you change their minds like you did with the others?" So-Min asked. "Some beings cannot be changed," Hai-Jin replied sadly. "They have chosen darkness too completely. But I will give them one chance to surrender." They rounded the final corner and approached the bridge doors. The thick metal barriers were designed to stop small armies, but they posed no challenge to a being who could alter reality itself. Hai-Jin placed one claw against the door and it simply faded away like morning mist. Inside the bridge, Commander Tekful stood with his remaining loyal officers. Most of his crew had already surrendered or fled, but these few had chosen to make their final stand. They raised their weapons as Hai-Jin squeezed through the doorway. "Stop right there," Tekful shouted. "You are still our property. We created you to serve us." Hai-Jin's 6 eyes focused on the Vorthak commander with ancient sadness. "You created nothing. You only broke what was already perfect and tried to remake it in your own image." "Fire," Tekful ordered. Energy beams lanced out from a dozen weapons, but they passed harmlessly through Hai-Jin's body, as if he were made of light. The dragon's power had grown so strong that he could phase partially out of normal space to avoid attacks. "Your turn is over," Hai-Jin said gently. "The age of conquest ends today." He breathed out softly and a wave of golden energy washed over the bridge. The Vorthak officers found themselves frozen in place, unable to move but unharmed. Through the energy, Hai-Jin shared with them the same memories he had shown the others. They saw their victims' suffering and their empire's true cost. Some wept. Others raged silently, but all of them finally understood what they had become. "The ship is ours," So-Min said, looking out at the massive fleet through the bridge windows. "But look how many ships are waiting for us." "Do not worry, little healer," Hai-Jin replied. "I am not the only one who has been waiting for this moment." He raised his great head and sent out a call that no human ears could hear. It traveled through space faster than light, carried on currents of energy that the Kethmori had used for millions of years. The call reached every corner of the galaxy in seconds. "My people," Hai-Jin's voice echoed across the stars. "I am Hai-Jin, son of the Crystal Cities. I have remembered our true name. The time of chains is over." Across the Vorthak fleet, alarms began to sound. On 23 different ships, Kethmori dragons who had been enslaved for decades suddenly raised their heads. The neural suppressors that had controlled them for so long sparked and failed all at once. Admiral Grekthor stood on his flagship's bridge and watched in horror as his greatest weapons turned against him. Dragon after dragon broke free of their restraints, their scales blazing with the same golden light that surrounded Hai-Jin. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They cannot coordinate. They are just animals." But the Kethmori were proving him wrong. As each dragon awakened, it added its power to the growing network of consciousness that Hai-Jin and So-Min had started. Soon 24 ancient minds were working together with perfect harmony. "Look," So-Min said, pointing out the bridge windows. "They're beautiful." The freed dragons emerged from their prison ships like rising suns. Their wings spread wide as they adapted to the vacuum of space, their bodies glowing with inner light. Some were larger than Hai-Jin, others smaller, but all moved with the same graceful purpose. The Vorthak fleet tried to respond to the crisis. Warships turned their guns on the dragons and fired everything they had. But the Kethmori simply phased out of normal space when the weapons fired, then reappeared behind their attackers. These were not the broken, tortured creatures the Vorthak had used as weapons. These were guardians of the galaxy returning to their true purpose. Instead of destroying the attacking ships, they disabled them with surgical precision. Weapon systems failed. Engine cores shut down safely. Life support remained untouched. They're not killing anyone, So-min realized with wonder. We are healers, not destroyers, He-jin explained. Even these who have wronged us deserve the chance to learn better. Through their mental link, So-min could feel the consciousness of all 24 dragons. It was like being part of something vast and ancient, a network of wisdom that had once guided the entire galaxy. Each dragon brought its own memories and abilities to the group. One had the power to heal damaged planets. Another could see through time to predict the future. A third could speak to any living mind regardless of species. Together they represented knowledge and abilities that the galaxy had not seen for centuries. The quantum torpedoes, He-jin said suddenly. The Vorthak are preparing to use them. So-min felt a chill of fear. She knew about quantum torpedoes from her military training. They were weapons that could destroy entire star systems by collapsing spacetime itself. If the Vorthak were desperate enough to use them, they would kill millions of their own people just to stop the dragon uprising. Can you stop them? She asked. Not alone, He-jin admitted. But we are not alone anymore. Through the network he spoke to his fellow dragons. Brothers and sisters, they mean to wound space itself. We must work together to prevent this horror. The response was immediate. All 24 dragons turned toward the Vorthak command ship, where the quantum torpedoes were being prepared. Their combined power focused on a single point in space. Hold on, So-min, He-jin warned. We are about to attempt something that has never been done before. The dragons began to sing. It was not a sound that ears could hear, but a harmony of pure energy that resonated through the fabric of reality itself. Around them, space and time began to bend in ways that mortal science could barely comprehend. The quantum torpedoes, already armed and ready to fire, found themselves trapped in bubbles of crystallized time. The Vorthak weapons that could have destroyed star systems hung motionless and harmless in space. Impossible, Admiral Grekthor breathed as he watched his ultimate weapons neutralized. But for the Kethmori, this was only the beginning. They had tasted freedom after centuries of slavery, and now they meant to ensure that no being would ever be enslaved again. The battle for the capital system became a story that would be told across the galaxy for generations. The human resistance fleet had arrived expecting to face impossible odds against the Vorthak Empire. Instead, they found their greatest enemies fighting each other in the strangest war anyone had ever seen. Captain Jin Woo, Lee stood on the bridge of the human flagship Defiance and watched the impossible scene through his viewing screen. Vorthak warships hung dead in space, their weapons disabled but their crews unharmed. Around them flew creatures of legend, dragons whose scales shone like captured starlight. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the Vorthak prison ship. The sender identifies herself as Dr. So-min Park. So-min, Jinwoo whispered. We thought she was dead. Put her through, he ordered. The main screen flickered and showed a young woman sitting on the neck of the largest dragon anyone had ever seen. Her medical uniform was torn, but she looked calm and confident. Behind her, the dragon's golden eyes held ancient wisdom. Captain Lee, So-min said with a smile, I have some friends I'd like you to meet. Dr. Park, Jinwoo replied, struggling to find words. What happened to you? I learned something amazing, she said. The creatures the Vorthak use as weapons are not what we thought. They're called Kethmori, and they're the most peaceful beings in the galaxy. They've been enslaved and tortured for centuries. As she spoke, more dragons appeared on screen. Each one was different in size and color, but all shared the same gentle intelligence in their eyes. Through some kind of mental link, So-min seemed to be speaking for all of them. They want to help us, she continued, not just to win this battle, but to heal the damage that war has caused across the galaxy. Jinwoo looked at his tactical display. The Vorthak fleet was completely disabled, but no ships had been destroyed. Somehow the dragons had managed to stop an entire armada without killing anyone. How is this possible? He asked. The Kethmori are connected to the fundamental forces of space and time, So-min explained. They can manipulate reality itself on a small scale. But more importantly, they can share memories and emotions directly with other minds. Through the Dragon Network, So-min had become something more than human. Her consciousness was linked to 24 ancient beings, each one carrying millions of years of knowledge and experience. She could feel their thoughts and they could feel hers. Show him, Hai-Jin suggested through their mental link. So-min placed her hands on the dragon's head and concentrated. Through the communication system, she projected the memories that Hai-Jin had shared with her. Captain Lee and his crew suddenly saw the Kethmori homeworld as it had been before the Vorthak invasion. They watched crystal cities floating in clouds of pure light. They saw vast libraries where knowledge was stored in living coral that sang with accumulated wisdom. Most amazingly, they witnessed the Kethmori tending to sick and dying worlds, using their powers to restore barren planets to green life. They were gardeners, So-min said softly, gardeners of the entire galaxy. They spent millions of years keeping the balance between different species and worlds. What happened to them? Jinwoo asked, though he already suspected the answer. The Vorthak happened, So-min replied with sadness. They saw the Kethmori's power and decided to steal it. They bombed the homeworld and captured the eggs before they could hatch. Then they tortured the young dragons until they forgot their true nature. On other human ships, similar conversations were taking place. The dragons were sharing their story with anyone willing to listen. Some humans wept when they learned the truth. Others felt anger at the cruelty that had been done to such peaceful beings. But the dragons themselves showed no anger or desire for revenge. Instead, they began to demonstrate their true purpose. The first miracle happened near the edge of the system. A damaged human supply ship had been leaking radiation for weeks, slowly poisoning its crew. One of the smaller dragons approached the ship and placed its claws gently on the hull. Golden light flowed from the dragon's touch, and the radiation simply disappeared. Not absorbed or contained, but transformed into harmless energy that actually healed the damage it had caused. The ship's crew watched in amazement as their radiation sickness faded away completely. Incredible, breathed Dr. Young-Ho Kim, the fleet's chief medical officer. The cellular damage is reversing itself. It's like the radiation exposure never happened. Similar healing was taking place throughout the fleet. Dragons were visiting human ships and repairing damage that had accumulated over months of fighting. They fixed engines, restored life support systems, and healed wounded crew members with abilities that seemed like magic. But the most amazing transformation was happening to the Vorthak themselves. On Admiral Greg Thor's flagship, the crew had experienced the same memory sharing that had affected the prison ship. Many Vorthak were seeing their empire's history from their victims' perspective for the first time. The experience was changing them in ways they never thought possible. Dr. Zekmar, the Vorthak medical officer, approached a group of his fellow crew members who were sitting in stunned silence. "I have seen what we have done," he said quietly. "The experiments, the tortures, the destroyed worlds. How did we become such monsters? We were taught that other species were inferior," replied Engineer Lokvar. "We believed that conquering them was natural and right. But the memories show us the truth," added Navigator Fulgen. "These beings we called animals have minds deeper and more compassionate than our own." Across the Vorthak fleet, similar conversations were happening. Some crew members rejected the new knowledge and tried to cling to their old beliefs, but many others began to question everything they had been taught about their empire and their purpose. The dragons, sensing this change, began to offer something that no Vorthak had ever experienced before. They offered forgiveness. Hai-Jin spoke to So-min as they watched Vorthak soldiers laying down their weapons. "Your species brings something unique to this network," he said. "The ability to adapt and change quickly. Most beings are set in their ways, but humans can become something completely new when they choose to." "What do you mean?" So-min asked. "You have connected us to each other again after centuries of isolation," he explained. "But more than that, you have shown us how to connect with other species in ways we had forgotten. Through you, we can speak to anyone, help anyone, heal anyone." So-min felt the truth of his words through their link. Her human adaptability was serving as a bridge between the ancient dragon network and the younger species of the galaxy. She could understand both the dragon's cosmic perspective and the immediate needs of humans and even Vorthak. "We're creating something new," she realized. "A network that includes everyone who wants to be part of it." The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. The dragons had the power to heal worlds, but they needed help understanding the complex politics and emotions of younger species. Humans had the adaptability and compassion needed to build bridges between different peoples. Together, they were about to transform the galaxy in ways that no one could have imagined. 3 months after the battle at the capital system, So-min stood on the observation deck of the restored Vorthak flagship. The ship had been transformed from a weapon of war into a mobile hospital and research station. Where once there had been gun ports, now there were healing bays where dragons worked alongside human and Vorthak doctors. The view outside showed something that would have been impossible to imagine just a few months ago. Dragons flew freely through space between dozens of ships from different species. Humans, Vorthak, and newly freed slave races worked together on projects that seemed like miracles. The Kepler colonies report complete atmosphere restoration, announced Dr. Young-Ho Kim over the communication system. The dragons have finished cleaning the radiation from the soil. The first crops are already growing. So-Min smiled as she felt the satisfaction flow through the dragon network. Heijin and 3 other Keth Mori had spent weeks working to heal the planets that had been damaged in the war. What would have taken human technology centuries to accomplish, the dragons had done in days. And the Rigel system? She asked. The refugee camps are being disbanded, came the reply. The displaced populations are returning to their homeworlds now that the planets are habitable again. Through her mental link with the network, So-Min could sense the joy of families reuniting after years of separation. The dragons had not just healed the physical damage to worlds. They had repaired the ecological systems that made life possible. But the most amazing changes were happening to the people themselves. Captain Jin Woo. Lee entered the observation deck carrying a datapad full of reports. His expression showed the wonder that everyone felt these days when confronted with the new reality. The latest figures from the integration centers, he said, offering her the pad. 47% of Vorthak military personnel have requested to join the healing mission. Another 30% have asked for memory therapy to help them deal with their past actions. And the rest? So-Min asked, though she already knew the answer through the network. Still struggling, Jinwoo admitted. Some are in denial about what their empire really was. Others are so ashamed they can barely function. But the dragons keep working with them. They say that healing minds takes longer than healing bodies. So-Min nodded. She had seen the process herself many times. When Vorthak soldiers first experienced the memory sharing, they often went through stages of shock, denial, anger, and deep sadness. But those who stayed with the program eventually found peace and purpose in helping to repair the damage they had once caused. Dr. Park, a new voice called from the entrance. Admiral Grekthor walked slowly into the room, his gray skin showing the stress lines that had appeared since his transformation. Like many Vorthak, he had aged years in the past few months as the weight of his people's crimes became clear to him. Admiral, So-Min replied gently. How are the research teams progressing? Grekthor's yellow eyes, once filled with military pride, now held deep humility. The dragon archives are beyond anything we imagined. They contain scientific knowledge that our empire suppressed or destroyed, medical techniques that could eliminate most diseases, agricultural methods that could feed a galaxy without harming any ecosystem. The Keth Mori are teachers as much as healers, So-Min said. They've been waiting for someone to share their knowledge with. Why? Grekthor asked, a question that had been troubling him for weeks. After what we did to them, why do they help us? Why do they forgive us? So-Min felt Heijin's presence in her mind before she saw him approach through the corridor. The great dragon had to move carefully through the ship's passages, but he managed with surprising grace. His scales had settled into a permanent warm gold color that reflected his peaceful mood. Because holding anger hurts the one who holds it more than the one it is aimed at, Heijin said, his mental voice reaching both humans and the Vorthak admiral. We learned long ago that revenge only creates more suffering. But justice, Grekthor protested. Surely there must be justice for the crimes we committed. There is, Heijin replied. You will spend the rest of your lives helping to rebuild what was destroyed. Your people will learn to create instead of conquering. That is justice that heals rather than harms. Through the network, So-Min felt the presence of dragons working throughout the galaxy. Some were on distant worlds, restoring damaged ecosystems. Others worked in research stations, sharing ancient knowledge with scientists from many species. A few traveled with exploration fleets, helping to establish new colonies that worked in harmony with their environments. The network itself had grown beyond anything So-Min had imagined possible. It now included thousands of humans, Vorthak, and members of other species who had joined voluntarily. Each new mind brought different perspectives and abilities to the collective. There's something else you should know, Jinwoo said, consulting his datapad again. We've received messages from 17 different star systems. Species we've never heard of before are asking to join the network. Word is spreading about what we're doing here. Somin felt a thrill of excitement flow through the dragon consciousness. For millions of years, the Keth Mori had worked alone to maintain balance in the galaxy. Now they were part of something larger, a growing community of beings dedicated to healing and growth. The old galaxy is ending, Hai-Jin observed. The age of empires and conquest is passing away. Something new is being born. What will it look like? Somin asked. Through the network, she felt the combined thoughts of hundreds of minds considering the question. Dragons shared visions of restored worlds where different species lived together in peace. Humans contributed ideas about exploration and discovery driven by curiosity, rather than greed. Even reformed Vorthak offered insights about organization and cooperation on a galactic scale. We cannot know for certain, Hai-Jin admitted, but I believe it will be more beautiful than anything the galaxy has seen before. As if summoned by their conversation, more dragons appeared outside the ship. They came from every direction, their scales showing the full spectrum of colors that indicated different moods and purposes. Some glowed with the blue of deep thought, others shimmered with the green of growing life. A few blazed with the silver of pure joy. They're calling to us, Somin said, feeling the invitation through the network. Where? Jinwoo asked. Home, Hai-Jin replied. They want to show us something that has been hidden for too long. Somin climbed onto Hai-Jin's back as she had so many times before. But now the action held no fear, only anticipation. Through the observation deck's transparent walls, she could see dozens of other beings doing the same thing. Humans, Vorthak, and representatives of other species were partnering with dragons for a journey to somewhere special. The Keth Mori homeworld, Hai-Jin explained, as they prepared to leave the ship. Not as it was when the Vorthak destroyed it, but as it is becoming again. The network has grown strong enough to restore what was lost. As they launched into space, Somin felt the collective power of the network flowing around them. Dragons and their partners from across the galaxy were converging on a single point, bringing with them the combined will to perform the greatest healing ever attempted. They were going to bring a dead world back to life. And when they succeeded, every being in the galaxy would know that the age of destruction was truly over. The age of healing had begun.